Hello, my name is Kristina Varaksina. I'm a photographer based in London. I do editorial, commercial, and also fine art work, specializing in fashion, beauty, and portraits. I've always loved visual arts, and as a kid I used to draw and paint a lot, so I went to art school and got a degree in graphic design, and I worked as a graphic designer, art director, and advertising for some years. And then I realized that it wasn't really that I was enjoying so much, so I decided to quit my job and get another degree in photography. And yeah, I've been doing photography since then for about 11, 12 years now. The project that I'm going to show you today is called The Essence of Beauty, and I've been working on it for over 2 years now. And my goal is to capture the essence of unconventional beauty. So what I mean by that is to bring in diversity in the visual representation of what we think is beautiful, and to give voices to more women and non-binary and transgender individuals, and to hear their opinion, what they think is beautiful, how they find their way towards accepting themselves, their own body, and feel confident in who they are and in their own skin. So this project that I'm working on, the idea is to empower and inspire other women when they see and hear the stories of these incredibly beautiful and confident women and non-binary individuals. Yeah, I've been working as a photographer in fashion and beauty industry for many years, and I kept, thinking for myself, it's too many similar faces. We're seeing the same type of very conventional beauty that is sort of expected to be used to advertise a certain product or to be a part of a fashion campaign or editorial. And I felt that a lot of women didn't relate to it and didn't find any inspiration in it. And that instead of empowering the viewer, it actually brings you down by not seeing anyone who looks like you or who has had the same experience as you had. So with my images of this project, I would like to inspire and empower ordinary women who are by no means ordinary, because we all have our own stories, our own experiences. I should probably repeat that. So with this project, I would like to inspire and empower all women and non-binary individuals from all over the world to connect to these subjects that I photograph, to hear their stories of resilience, of what they've been through, and relate to their own stories of, I can actually see myself going through similar thing, and I can see this person being photographed in a beautiful, empowering way. It means that I can also believe in myself, and gives me confidence as well. And I have learned personally a lot from all these people who I have photographed. It's really inspiring for me as a photographer, so I hope that it will inspire the viewer as well. And I just want to have these women to be represented so that the industry will hear more different voices, so it is not so homogeneous in what we see every day, and we will all feel included. That would be very beneficial for this industry. One of the challenges of this project is to find people who would be interested and confident enough in sharing their stories, because a lot of the stories that I tell, they can be very personal, about growing up with either visual difference or disability, or whatever you struggle with. And we all have these things that we are very not very confident about, and things that bring us down. And so finding your way of becoming open about this and sharing it with other people is not an easy journey. So that's also a challenge for me, to find people who are ready to share the stories. So I look for models everywhere, through friends, through colleagues, through social media, of course. There are also modeling agencies that now thankfully recognizing the need in the industry to have more diversity. So working with modeling agencies as well, and freelance models, and also absolutely normal people who had no prior modeling experience to that, but just confident enough to be in front of my camera. So visually for this project, I almost from the start knew that it had to look very clean and minimalistic, because I really wanted to focus on the emotion, on the feeling of the person that I'm photographing, so that the viewer can see the connection between us, between the photographer and the subject, but also they can connect to the person as well. So it, when you look at the picture, it doesn't become about the lighting or about clothing or their makeup or hair, but it's more about the emotion and the feeling that they give you when you look at them. And so that's why I chose very soft, very sort of daylight or natural looking light, although I use artificial light as well. And minimum, like very clean setup, like a tabletop. In most cases, in some cases, just the background and nothing else really distracting from the expression, from the body language, and from the connection with the viewer. I think it's really important for any photographer, as any other artist, is to find something that really matters to you, a subject that you're not doing that you think someone else is going to like, but you're doing it because you're really passionate about that subject. And I found that subject for myself is celebrating women, celebrating diversity, celebrating the stories and challenges, and becoming confident about yourself and believing in yourself. And that's really the key. Like, if you have a story like that, if you have a subject like that you're so passionate about, that's the main step if you want to break into photography or do a bigger project. If you're really passionate about, you'll find a way how to find those people, or if you're photographing landscapes or you're doing reportage or street photography, you'll find how to do it, as long as you know the feelings that you want to express. And so in my case, it's like I said, it's very simple. You can even do this, what I do, basically at home, if you have a nice enough window light, if you have big windows. All you need is just kind of like a clean background and that nice light coming slightly from the side, and then you have your subjects. That's all you need. And it's all about the feeling. If you can connect with your subject, if you connect with a story, and the viewer will see that your passion, your connection with it, then the project will be successful. It doesn't really matter what technology you use, or what lighting you use, or things like that. They aren't as important as your passion and your heart that goes into the project. I photographed over 20 people now for this project, and everyone's story it's not just empowering and inspiring, but it really touches you on the most deep level. And I get to know them really well before the shoot and during the shoot, and all of them, they really matter to me. And they were definitely subjects in the beginning who really inspired me to continue on with the project, when I really felt it is something that more people would like to see and hear about. And one of them is Samira. Is a young girl who I met by accident. She was a family member of a friend, and she had a disability. She was born with just one eye and also some internal organs damaged or missing, and so the doctors didn't even believe she would survive, but she did, and all her life is really a miracle. And when you meet her, she's so special. it's just the way how she carries herself, how she treats other people, how kind and full of life she is. And when you look at her, you really feel that she's incredibly beautiful, although conventionally, no one would see her, her features as conventionally beautiful. So, and then I thought, this is it. This is what the essence of beauty means to me, is that connection, that internal projection of the beauty. And so I wanted to really continue exploring it and kind of digging further into the subject. I think at first, when I started working on this project and finding time in between other projects and things I was doing to, to support myself, to make some income, I didn't go into this project thinking, oh, it's going to be this big, or these platforms are going to feature it. No, I was doing it because I felt the need to say something, to contribute to some change in the industry, and to really inspire other people, but also to express my own opinion about this whole situation. And so when it started really being picked up by big names in the industry and featured in different platforms and winning some competitions, it felt rewarding, but also it felt, it was a nice surprise, because it wasn't the goal necessarily, but it was a nice thing to realize, okay, that it means that more people care about the same things, the same values that I care about. Today we're going to be photographing Jennifer. She's a young model, and I met her through an agency who she has just signed with and just started being represented by them. She hasn't had like a big modeling career yet, but this agency called ZBD, and it represents models with different disabilities. And Jennifer was born not being able to hear, so she has to use a hearing aid. And even though I don't want this to become center of the story, but I would like this to be seen as well in my pictures, that she's wearing that hearing aid, because I think models like that haven't been represented in the industry yet, and I would like the viewer to see, and also people who have also hearing disability, that they can see, okay, there are people like us, and being photographed and being on the pages of magazines and things like that. So I would like it to be visible, but I also would like to make a story about Jennifer and her own journey. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Before we get started, I'm going to talk you through my kit. So this is my backpack. It holds some of my stuff, especially when I go on location, when I need to travel. So this is very important, because I often shoot tethered. And then I have my second lens. So this camera is my really good friend. It's Fujifilm GFX 100S. It's a medium format camera, and I really appreciate the amount of information it captures, not only pixel-wise, but also dynamic range and color range. And it's really good at its ISO as well, and I love shooting with higher ISOs in low light conditions, usually indoors. That comes really handy. So yeah, it's a really nice camera, and I have a couple lenses that I like working with. So basically this one is my go-to lens. It's 45 millimeter. This is, since it's a medium format, so on 35 millimeter format cameras, it's an equivalent to also about 35 millimeters, so it's slightly wider angle. And I really like it for portraits, because it gives you a little bit of distortion, so it gives like, adds this kind of like dynamic kind of element to the shots. so it's not too flat and it expands the space a little bit. So I really rely on this lens for a lot of shoots, from regular portraits to fashion to like even beauty sometimes. So yeah, and then my other lens, which just is really beautiful, it's an 80mm one, which is about 50mm on the 35mm sensor. So it's a very normal sort of lens that captures normal range, that it doesn't compress or expand the space. It's really beautiful because it goes to 1.7 and it gives you really, really shallow depth of field and beautiful bokeh. And it's just amazing for portraits and for close-up shots of, you know, people's faces and hands and all kinds of small things. Yeah, so I think I usually don't use any zoom lenses or interchangeable focal distance lenses, so these two are totally enough for me. They cover all my needs, so yeah, that's great. And yeah, like I said, my tether cable, in addition to other small things that I have in my backpack, like spare batteries, chargers, you know, all these small things. Tethering is what I always do. And then another thing that we're going to be using today is artificial light source. So this is a strobe, Profoto B10 Plus. It's very lightweight, very versatile, and it's battery powered, so you can move it around. With this light, we're going to be using a couple of modifiers. So for the key light, I'm going to be using quite a big octa and shooting through this even bigger diffuser, 2x2 meter or 6x6 foot silk, which is a one-stop diffusion fabric. And you can see it right behind me. So I used these layers of diffusions to create a bigger light source and even softer light. I really like, for this project, I really like the look of that nice big window daylight kind of look. And then the other light source is going to just bounce off a wall, and it's going to have a blue gel on it for an ambient, cooler light. Okay, so we're starting with the first look, which is quite simple. We've chosen to go with this black top, and I want it to be really simple because this is a story about the person, not so much about the clothes. So I always try to be quite minimalistic. And yeah, let me take you through my camera settings as well. So I'm shooting at the shutter speed 1/125 of a second, and my aperture is 3.2 currently. I kind of tend to go between 3.2 and maybe 4.5, but I don't shoot with kind of a long depth of field because I want the background, even though there's nothing on the background, but I still want it to be softer. And my ISO here in these lighting scenarios is 500. Sometimes I go to higher ISOs as well because this camera really lets me to do so. But yeah, if I shoot if I mix with natural light, then I probably need to bump up my ISO quite a bit. But this 500 works really well for me in the studio. And yeah, and then another thing is what's important for me here is my white balance in this camera, because I'm mixing the two lights and I don't want the light on the model to be too orange, too warm. So I'm doing at this moment 4500 Kelvin temperature, so it cools down the overall temperature of the shot a little bit, which makes the background look a little bit more blue than it normally would, but it looks neutral on the person. And just before we start shooting, I have tethered my camera to my laptop. I always find it very, very helpful to see my images on a bigger screen in case I need to check the focus, make sure all the details, the hair, the makeup are right. And yeah, it's just really helpful to see it large before I shoot. So maybe don't look too serious or too sad. We need to inspire the women and other people who are going to be looking at these pictures. So inspire and empower, strong and confident. For this setup, I'm using 2 lights, and sometimes I mix an artificial light source and a window light. But in this studio, we don't have a window light, so I'm just using 2 artificial lights, 2 strobes. So this is my key light. It's a very soft diffuse light. You can see a really wide diffuser here. So I'm going for this really kind of window light look. That's why I want it to be really, really soft and big. There's an octobox behind this silk, and it's been diffused, so there's a distance between the silk and the light source. So I'm using the entire surface of this to maximize the size of the light. So I want it to be as soft as possible. Also, you can't really see it, but inside that octobox, there's an orange gel that is making this strobe light warmer, because I want to have a contrasting light on the model and on the overall background. So I want the model to be a little bit warmer and overall light to be a little bit cooler. That's why I have a second light hidden behind this polyboard that has a blue gel on it. So it's making the ambient light a little bit cooler. So I want to emphasize this contrast between the light on the model and the light on the background. But it's not a big contrast. You will see it in the photos. It's quite subtle, but I still like to have that separation between the model and the background. That's beautiful. Whenever I have a moment during the shoot, I always try and look back at all the shots that we've got so far, just to see what kind of expressions we've explored, so that I can explore maybe the other side of the person, what we haven't told about them yet, maybe another side of their personality, and yeah, just to see also what angles work, what looks better with that particular shape of the face or the body language. So just to see how they look at different angles and different expressions, and make some notes for myself, and then I can direct them better for the second look or other upcoming looks. And I mark the ones that I like as I go through them, so I can later on compare the best shots or my favorite shots. So when I look at the pose, I don't necessarily grab my camera right away. I kind of want to just analyze the shape of the body and what kind of character it creates. And also I look at the light as well. So I think because she's now a little bit higher than the first look, I'm going to raise the light a little bit to get more light into the face. When you're shooting white elements, you need to just be careful to not overexpose those areas with the white, because it's then a bit harder to recover them. And I like using sort of this minimalistic white setups. Let's adjust your hand, maybe put it here. Yeah. And like I said in the beginning, I like to focus on the person, on their expression, on their body language. So I don't want to have too much color or too much elements to distract from that. That's why I'm using mostly white, but then I add, that separation and color with the color of my lighting. You want to put your foot down? Yeah, nice. That's very nice. Okay, do you want to change the position? Something a bit softer. Camera. power this down like a third of a stop, just a little bit less light on the background. Just because your subject is turning, sometimes you need to also readjust the light for another position. So I just move it a little bit left and right, but it's not a lot, maybe by just a couple of feet. Yeah, that's nice. I like this. Very cute. Yeah. Good. So the 3 tips that I would like you to take away from today is, first of all, shoot the subjects that really mean a lot to you. Don't try to please anyone in order to break into the field. If you're working on something that really matters to you and you can find your own way of looking at this project or this subject and expressing your feelings about it, people in the field, the people in the industry, they will recognize it and they will appreciate they will appreciate the amount of passion that you approach your project with. So that's my first tip, shoot something that you really care about. Second tip is start simple. Don't try to maybe, use all the lights, strobes, color gels, whatever it is. Start simple. If you can learn how light affects the mood and the emotion, I'm talking about as a photographer, I'm talking about my own experience. If you can learn how that even one light can change the mood of your image completely, if you can learn that, if you can study what light does to your images, to your subject, and to the feel of the final shot, then you can introduce any light you want, any color of the light you want. Dark or high key or whatever you want, but if you understand the simplicity, the simplest approach of what light does, if you can master it, that will make all the next things so much easier for you. And the third tip is, I would say, don't ignore post-production. I think in our digital world, if you shoot a film camera, then it's really great, then a lot of problems are already solved for you. But if you're using digital cameras, a lot of times raw images that come out of your camera, they look so generic and they look all the same. So it's very important, of course, to establish your own aesthetic. And that aesthetic is, again, an extension of who you are, what you feel about your subject, what you want to express. And so finding your own sort of color palette in addition to the lighting that you're using, all these tools, they create your visual language of you as an artist. So it's your toolkit that you should know how to use. So post-production is actually a really big part of it. As far as your career goes, I'm going to speak again from my own experience. I work with companies or magazines. So I don't really work with individuals, so that will be a different ways of approaching it. But what I recommend, if you do something similar to what I do, is to submit your images to as many competitions as possible. But of course, they have to be really good ones. So look at the judges, panelists who are, you need to see where they are, what they do in the industry. Find the names that you want to get your work in front of, and then submit your work to those competitions. And you're not losing anything. Okay, maybe you're losing a bit of money, unfortunately, but you're still gaining the experience of submitting your work and seeing who is winning and analyzing why they're winning. So, monitoring all this contests is also very, very important. Seeing more work, understanding why this, some of the projects getting more recognition than others. It will help you grow. And then once even your work doesn't win anything in this particular competition, it is still being seen by the judges. So it is still very, very important, and you never know when the right person is going to notice you. So don't get discouraged, keep submitting, keep showing your work, getting it in front of as many people as possible. I think photography industry is highly competitive, and it's really hard to break into it. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, but specifically for women, because it's traditionally a male-dominated field. So I think women who are already in the industry, or who are making hiring decisions, or making any decisions, should be very supportive towards each other and celebrating women working in the field, but also female subjects photographed from a female perspective, with a female gaze as opposed to male gaze. So all of these changes really need to happen at this moment in time. It's really an honor to be in the 5th years of WEX's Women in the Industry feature, and I'm very happy to be a part of it, and I hope this is inspiring to all the other women who are trying to get into the industry. And thanks so much for the Fujifilm, for their support, and thank you so much for watching, and have a great evening.